Thank you. Good morning. Welcome, everyone. Excellencies, distinguished panelists, and distinguished guests. While we give a few minutes to our audience to find a seat, I'll briefly introduce myself. My name is Claire Davan. I am a public sector specialist with a climate change governance focus for different international organizations. I will be moderating this panel this morning, this session on powering Africa, breaking the energy divide. So first, let me introduce our distinguished panelists. We have Mrs. Cristina Duarte, who is coming from New York, Under Secretary General and Special Advisor on Africa. We have His Excellency Mr. Mohammed Moumouni, who is former Foreign Affairs Ministers from Ghana. Welcome. We have Mr. Antonio Enrique da Silva, who is the founder and managing director of InvestA, which is an Angolan investment fund focused on infrastructure and energy. We also have Mrs. Paula Riveros Perez, country manager at Enel Green Power Morocco, and Mr. Lawrence Jones, who is Senior Vice President for International Programs at Edison, coming from the US. We also have Mr. Loïc Jaegert-Huber, who's a French foreign trade advisor. And last but not least, Mrs. Fatima Zahra Al Khalifa, welcome, General Manager, Renewable Energy Cluster, based in Morocco. Before I get to the heart of the questions, I just wanted to share some background information about the topic of energy, and in particular the energy access on this continent. We have, as we all know, about 600 million people on the continent that are lacking access to electricity. And this is about 43% of the total population here, so almost 1 person out of 2. And in addition, on top of that, we have climate change-induced disasters that are more common than they used to be, and some more often than not more severe. They threaten existing infrastructure. And this is well reported by our scientists and by the international consensus. Besides this current energy access issue, we also have, on the other hand, the potential. So Africa's energy future is, by, again, scientific consensus, is most secure, economically viable, and sustainable if it is built upon its immense renewable energy resources. And if we get into the specifics of that, in terms of potential, we have 2 major facts that I think are important to share. First, the solar potential. Africa's solar potential is 130 times its current electricity generation. So it's humongous. And this is coming from the IPCC report from 2021. And the second number that I think is important to keep in mind is the wind and the solar potential that could provide more than 100 times Africa's projected demand in terms of energy. And this is coming from the review Nature from 2021. So with that in mind, I would like to ask a first question to Her Excellency Mrs. Cristina Duarte. And in particular, as a special advisor on Africa, you see the continent's challenges from a global governance perspective. Given that the energy divide is often an implementation rather than a funding problem, what do you see from your perspective are the specific governance mechanisms that could de-risk projects for investors and that could accelerate the translation of Africa's immense potential into connecting megawatts for its people? Thank you.
very brief. Your question, with all my due respect, is trying to put me in a transactional mindset. I always avoid to be in that strict perimeter because I do believe that any transaction in Africa should bring a transformative dimension. Otherwise, will not produce change. But going back or concentrate on the theme of today's conversation. First, I believe that Africa should never accept to discuss climate without discussing energy. Never. If we Africans are in a table only to discuss climate, may I give you an advice? Don't be on that table. Unless they associate to that conversation energy. Otherwise, at the end of the day, you'll be in a trap. Second idea that I would like to bring to this conversation is, as you know, our contribution is a more 4%. I'm an African, I hope you understand me. And then as an African, I'm here, I just produce 4%, and I have this global narrative telling me, energy transition, energy transition. But for me, transition, if I'm already there, I'm already in this chair. You're asking me to transit to a position that I'm already there? So the narrative of energy transition in Africa needs to be changed, needs to be adjusted to African realities. Third, I do believe that Africa's priority is not energy transition, with all my due respect, because you are already there, 4%. Priority is energy access. We have 600 million people without energy access in the 21st century. I look at my right, I see countries on AI, going to Mars for fun. In my continent, 600 million people don't have electricity. So for us, priority is energy access. If you agree with me, I do believe that, and I did that as Minister of Finance in Cape Verde, so I'm very comfortable in saying, so nobody can finger point say, oh, you are not green. No. I believe that each African country is entitled to three things. First, to undertake its own energy planning. Second, in the process of undertaking its own energy planning, that same African country is entitled to put all energy sources on the table. All, renewable and non-renewable. Third, each African country is entitled to define its own energy mix in a dynamic way, recognizing first that we all in the earth need to contribute to a common final destination, a green planet. And Africa needs to be in that path. But please, at least recognize that Africa has a different starting point. We don't have the same starting point. We have a different starting point. And what we ask to the international community, recognize that we do have a different starting point. Energy access should be our driver. And don't ask me to serve energy transition by sacrificing my development. And having said that, I believe that energy adaptation should be our main element in that equation, not climate adaptation, not climate mitigation. So I do believe that doing that, we can start building a mutual accountability framework to deliver a green planet. Look at COP, and I finish here. We just closed COP 30 in Brazil. We already delivered 30 COPs. In concrete terms, what we deliver? 1.5, gone, as everybody knows. What we deliver, and why COP 30 have not delivered? Because I think has been missing an element in each and every COP, a mutual accountability framework. Developing countries go there, And they promise beautiful NDCs with no intention to deliver them because they have no money. Developed countries go there, what they promise, millions and billions. No penny, almost no penny has been delivered. And we just go on because a mutual accountability has not been built to make the COP an effective instrument to save the planet, and I stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We can applaud, yes. Thank you, Mrs. Undersecretary, for this enlightening comment, and we'll have the opportunity with this panel to explore potential pathways. I would like to turn to Your Excellency, Mr. Mumuni from Ghana. My question to you, a bit more regional, but of course you are more than welcome to address the comment expressed before you. So a question. Ghana is a key member of the West African power pool. From your diplomatic experience, what is the single greatest political obstacle to making such regional power pools more functional? And how can African nations overcome that sovereignty versus integration dilemma to create a seamless continental energy market? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone, and I thank you for coming. Madam Chair, allow me to acknowledge His Majesty King Mohammed the VI, and also to thank the Amadeus Institute and the MEDays organization for inviting me to be part of this group. Madam Chair, talking about energy, it's widely acknowledged that energy is the lifeblood of any modern economy. It powers our industries, and it fosters the ambition to create a good economy with the necessary absorptive capacity to create jobs, decent and satisfying jobs for the teeming millions of our youth. Unfortunately, as it is well acknowledged, the energy gap in our African countries is extremely vast. And a lot of our population do not have access to affordable and reliable energy. It is estimated, for instance, that only 58% of the population in Africa have access to electricity as of 2023. That is leaving over 600 million people out of the equation. And sub-Saharan Africa alone is accounting for 85% of people, of the world population that is still in darkness. Now, the daily reality is that there is a vast difference between demand and supply. Now, per capita energy use is extremely low. It is also estimated that Africa produced about 5.7% only of the global energy in 2023. And that share will only climb to about 6.8 by 2050, while its population is on a rapid rise every time. Now, closing this gap is not going to be easy. It will require at least $95 billion annually for universal access by 2030, with huge financing gaps in grid upgrades, renewable rollout, and clean cooking solutions. Then there is also the urban-rural divide. 84% of those without electricity live in rural areas where access can be under 10% in some countries. Now, these people in the rural areas are also people who are in a bracket of extremely vulnerable, poor, and disadvantaged. And therefore, the lack of access to power is exacerbating the issue of poverty and driving people to the margins of society where they are in constant danger of being excluded. So even as our countries show positive GDP growth, these people become victims of development because they have no access to energy. In short, hundreds of millions of, they lack power, demand outpaces supply, and the infrastructure investment required is in several billions of dollars. And yet, our countries are not in a position to finance or to close this gap. Foreign direct investment is not coming at the rate at which it could keep up with this. And our various governments have tried to create enabling environments to attract foreign investment into the system. But even that one is not enough. Our national budgets are not able to fully take in tow the challenges of providing the necessary wherewithal to increase power generation and to improve the grid system. So perhaps, like many countries have done, my country, Ghana, for instance, have consciously decided to construct PPP frameworks as public-private producers initiative and make it attractive for foreign investors to come in and participate in power generation, partly to alleviate this problem. We think that it is a matter of national priority that the power gap, the energy gap, be reduced, because we are all desirous of promoting an equitable economy which will serve all of our people without distinction, without discrimination, because we need to build economies that have the necessary absorptive capacity, to create wealth, and to create jobs for our people, and to be able to tackle the issue of poverty head on. So I believe that energy really holds the key, to ensuring that we achieve this desiderata. And no effort should be left unattended in our effort to bring some kind of, because we are looking at 2030 when we are expecting to achieve universal, affordable, and reliable energy for the majority of our people. And therefore, we really need to continue to work extremely hard at that. For me, personally, it's an uncharted territory, and I think that I will leave the matter at this point for more.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. So, Mr. Antonio da Silva, we just heard that this huge financing gap for investment needed in infrastructure is about up to 85 billion US dollars. As a Pan-African investor yourself, you weigh in risk and return daily. What is the most significant non-financial risk that you face when investing in African energy infrastructure? And what is the one thing you think that governments could do tomorrow to take the next step and to move on to the reform train? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for your question. And it's a great honor for me to be here and participate in this 17th edition of the MEDays. And of course, I also am very happy to share the floor with the distinguished panelists. From an investor perspective, it is important to first of all, we acknowledge that Africa has a lot of potential. We acknowledge that Africa has the resources, the natural resources available across the continent, but there's still a misperception, I would call, about the risk itself, because with all those natural resources and the value that they represent, we should be able to find alternative ways to secure the necessary guarantees, because those resources are on the ground, they are available, they can serve also as security. But this is not an approach that is done from a singular perspective, only from the African perspective. It needs to be shared by all stakeholders, and for that, government, especially on the political side, they need to secure investment acts that are innovative to accommodate both the national needs but also the investor needs. And this is where we are already seeing a convergence in approaches around the continent. We have good examples of projects that have been developed here in the Kingdom of Morocco. We also see now coming in the region where I come from, of Angola, with the Lobito corridor and with a transmission line that's going to cross borders between Angola and the Congo and Zambia. So these kinds of new approaches will bring not only a light to the tunnel, but will enable investors to have a precedent on how, regarding the conditions that are in place, how it's possible to find a viable solution to invest. The other issue that it's also important is the scale of the projects. With the scale of the projects, we're also dealing with the scale of risk. So there's a need to be able to mitigate that risk in ways that they don't compromise project viability. And of course, joining forces with local investors is also an important way, being there institutional or private sector ones, it's a way to do so. So I think we're living in a dynamic world where changes, and even from a geopolitical perspective, influences are making opportunities change in shape and change in pertinence, looking at markets at a local, regional, or continental level in different ways. I am very optimistic about the future, and I'm even more optimistic about the resilience of Africans in finding ways to shape their own future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is the perfect segue for our next speaker, Mrs. Paula Riveros Perez, Country Manager for Enel Green Power Morocco. From an on-the-ground renewable energy developer and operator's perspective, can you elaborate on the potential that you see in the region?
Okay, thank you so much for the invitation. For Enel Group, it is an honor to be here and to share our perspective in terms of this important subject. For you to know, Enel Group is an Italian multinational energy company present in around 30 countries around the world, with 97 megawatt of installed capacity, from which 67 are renewables. We are present in South Africa and also in Morocco. So according to Enel perspective, and as you have been said before, Africa faces a great gap. Nearly the 600 million people still lacking access to electricity and a per capita consumption that is below other emergency regions. So, and at the same time, the continent holds the world's strongest and most abundant renewable resources. So for Enel perspective is how to. It's about how collective, what will be the collective ability to transform this potential into a sustainable, into a sovereign, and into an inclusive development. For that, I will share 4 points. The first one is that Africa, benefiting from exceptional solar irradiance, strong wind potential from the Sahara to the Atlantic coast, major hydropower, and a unique geothermal resources that could represent 40% of the global technical renewable potential. How we can make it happen, Africa being a real pillar of the global energy transition. We believe also in diversity of energy resources. Provided what? Provided plans that are clear, provided that skills and governance are strengthened, and provided also that grids are enhanced. So at Enel, we have the opportunity to contribute to the energy transition of several regions, Chile, Brazil, Italy, that combine large renewable scale projects with digitalized grids and with storage that creates a robust and resilient energy ecosystem. So we are not talking about from what the molecules come, gas, hydrogen, or renewables, or we are talking about how to build in the future a modern, innovative electrical system and ecosystem that can merge electrification, digitalized grids, affordable renewable power, gas, rural mini-grids, decentralized solar and storage solutions. And when it comes to how we can create a real local and how we can transform territories, this is the second point. So we believe, as we all know, infrastructure projects can mobilize a wide range of skills coming from engineering, civil work, logistics, safety, etc. But during the operational phase, at least for renewables, they create fewer jobs. So the point is, how do we create new value? How do we add the value thanks to the existence of a specific power plant or of a renewable power plant? We can set examples like local tourism H.E.M's emerging around hydropower construction site, companies that are dedicated for solar paneling cleaning for operation and maintenance on a long time, lifetime of companies to do real work on sites, logistics and catering services linked to the project development, or rural micro enterprises that are enabled thanks to the electricity access. So we believe that this lighting up, it's a way of lighting up and to contribute also real to the local territories. As Enel Group, we have been applying the concept of this creating shared value approach from the inception of the project, meaning we study the territory, socially talking, in the point of view also of the economics. How do the territory want to move? How they are imagining the future? And then we try to match the willingness and the skills of the territory and how the project can enhance that, but in a long term, in a sustainable term. Local training is the basis. It's the basis. Beyond that, employing, the basis. Beyond that, how we can really improve local entrepreneurship that are sustainable, thanks to the presence of a future project. So that, according to us, enabled that each new renewable megawatt will really contribute in a measurable way to the human development in the site, in the territory that allows the existence of the project. Then the third point that also I wanted to share is in terms of what should be there for the existence of a new project. And we believe that a planification that is clear for the investment, a regulatory framework also that it is clear, and grids that are able to integrate the new flows coming from the diverse projects. As an example, we have seen the initiative like West Africa Power Pool or East Africa Cross-Border Interconnection that demonstrate that regional cooperation is essential to pool resources, to harmonize regulation, and also to ensure stability. So the last point is, okay, and what about energy sovereignty and foreign investment? We believe that both elements are not contradictory objectives. On the contrary, we believe that they can reinforce each other when they build on a clear vision, on a clear planning, and in a transparent governance. So a country can strengthen its sovereignty when it diversifies energy resources, modernize the grids, and develop local skills. These three pillars, what does represent these three pillars? So stability, regulatory visibility, and human capital. These three pillars, we believe that are strong elements also to investments to come and to attract long-term investors. And then maybe a little focus on the regulatory framework. A predictable and fair regulatory framework is also essential. Investors accept risk when they are clear and when the commitments are sustained. They withdraw when the rules or agreement are or change abruptly. So sovereignty is expressed through the state's ability to set a transparent, long-term rules with balanced partnership. And this doesn't mean isolation. So at Enel, we believe so in a model in which the nation retains the strategic control while benefiting from world-class innovation, coming from renewables in our side because this is our business, smart grids, and digital solutions. As an example, Enel through Enel Grids, we are operating one of the most digitalized networks in the world, thanks to a clear regulatory framework that allows us to provide services to the end consumers of electricity. So as a conclusion, I will say that lighting up Africa, according to Enel perspective, is not only about electricity. It means building an energy ecosystem capable of supporting the urbanization, the industrialization and innovation, while reinforcing at the same time sovereignty and also investor attractiveness. By what? Modern and interconnected grids, large-scale renewable projects, decentralized solution for all the rural areas that they need, and strengthen an inclusive governance. So our company stands clearly ready to support this movement, bringing our global expertise into renewables, into smart grids, and into social innovation. This is the point that I wanted to share today.
Thank you very much for this very rich presentation. Let's move to Mrs. Fatima Zahra El Khalifa. You are the General Manager of Renewable Energy Cluster here in Morocco. As a leader in the Moroccan business community, can you share with us your perspective on how we can actively dismantle the resource curse and ensure that the massive investment in energy and mining projects builds and funds African-owned SMEs, so really benefit locally and regionally along the value chain, turning national projects into true national wealth generators? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So as has been said at the beginning, we are in the transition. We're still talking how to make it, but we're ongoing. So it's important to maximize the impact of the renewable energy project. It's really crucial to be able to benefit the industry, the startups, the communities from this big renewable infrastructure. How to do that? First of all, we need to know very well our local value chain and how to integrate them locally, how to give visibility to the private sector, to the industry, in order to develop, to produce locally some high value components that are needed within these big power plants. And this is the first step. And the second step is how to see how to do it globally with other African countries, neighborhoods, and friends countries. I think this is crucial because we know today that all or major components like panels are imported from abroad, mainly China. So there is some component that we cannot replace, we cannot produce locally because it's not competitive. But there is many other components that we can do, that we have the expertise, we have the ability to produce them in Africa and to export them. And the mistake that we do, and we're still doing, is that we see our own market. For example, in Morocco, we think the Moroccan market, which is very small and cannot be interesting enough to create an industry. But we need to see it as an African market and to be able to discuss, to have a clear idea about the needs of all these African renewable energy projects and to put the industry behind and to see how we can provide and how we can answer the need of our industry. And this is for me very important. We need as well to support our startups. African youth, they have very interesting ideas and also bankable projects that we need to support by financial institutions. So that's a second axis that is not our strength, because we see that raising funds in the green tech are not very, I mean in terms of number, we're not the best class in this topic. So I think that there's a lot of things to do together in order to make it more efficient. And we see it as well as a problem in terms of project bankability. When we go to the financial words and we try to understand the figures, for example, the Green Climate Fund is one of the biggest green funds in the world. And we see that only less than 10% of the projects that are financed or funded are not from Africa. They're in India, they're in Asia, and we're asking ourselves why we cannot be able to access to this international finance, since as African country we are the less polluting continent. We don't have this huge industry, but we're not funded, we're not supported by financial institutions or other continents. So this is something that we need to work on all together, and Africa needs to trust Africa. It's something that we hear like lately so much, but I believe that Morocco is an example, because we learned it and today we are all in the same mindset. I like to give this example, but if we move from the energy sector and we talk, for example, football, it's our favorite topic right now. As an African country, we never thought that we can arrive to the level that we went in the World Cup semi-final, which is amazing. But we did it when we trusted in ourselves, when we had a Moroccan and African trainer, coach, yes, for our Moroccan team. So we did it. So we can think big, we can dream, but this dream could be reality if we trust ourselves, if we trust our capacity, our capabilities, our expertise, which is really something that we value, and the renewable energy is the same. If I can share the Moroccan example, for example, we've developed one of the biggest power plants in Africa, in Ouarzazate, and around this project we tried to make it as a pilot, where we've been working on the development or the communities around all this infrastructure projects. We tried to have this integrated vision where we worked with as well in different programs with with some international programs from building capacity, something that Mazen had developed lately. It's called SMAP, where we try to work on some of the points that I discussed on the bankability of the project, but also on how to launch international appel d'offres for the renewable projects. And Mazen have been developing this approach with 17 African countries to do some building capacity and trainings on how to build all the process, how to make the project bankable, how to work on the institutional financing, on the development of all the bidding process, how to give trust and to make sure that all the DFIs could be interested in this type of project. And this integrated and regional programs, I think that is something that we need to grow all together and that we need to accelerate on the coming years.
Thank you very much. Turning to Mr. Loïc Jaegert-Huber now, French foreign trade advisor and very knowledgeable on European interest in general. I'm curious to hear your perspective on the European public and private capital is crucial for Africa's energy transition or energy leapfrogging, as we sometimes hear. However, there seems to be a mismatch sometimes between what European partners can offer and what African nations may need. And so my question to you is, beyond some of the usual solutions that we hear, lowering cost of capital, for instance, how can European financing mechanisms be fundamentally redesigned to be more agile, less bureaucratic, and better at funding those projects for the last mile of energy access? And is there any also inspiration from other regions of the world that you find is interesting to consider in this potential redesign of how Europeans invest?
Thank you very much. First of all, I'm very happy to be here at the MEDays 26th edition, and very happy to catch up with former colleagues or friends. And it's complicated to speak after such a smart panelist. But your question is very important, how to become faster, more agile, less bureaucratic, and more relevant for what you call the last mile of energy access. So I will answer directly, but let me share, first of all, one conviction. Africa is not only part of the global energy transition, Africa can shape it. Not because of cliché or typically potential about sun, the wind, and the minerals, but because Africa is already inventing new ways of producing, new ways of distributing, and governing energy systems. Because of the urgency due to the climate crisis. Because Africa is at the forefront of this climate crisis. So there is no choice. It's not a question about the old world and Africa, only 4% polluting. No, Africa is at the forefront of the climate crisis. So there is no choice to move towards energy transitions. So, which means, and we see it every day with technologies like mini-grids, like microgrids, like pay-as-you-go solar home systems, like mobile money, like remote maintenance, data-driven operations, and of course, energy storage systems. And these innovations were not imported from Europe or other sides of the world. They were created by African entrepreneurs for African realities. So which means the real question is not how can Europe help Africa? The real question is how can European finance finally align itself with what Africa is already creating? So let me structure the answer in three simple ideas. First, what I call the mismatch, and what you call the mismatch between tools and needs. From what I've seen, not only in Morocco, but in North Africa, I was CEO for NG in North Africa, from Senegal to Egypt. The gap comes from three things. First of all, the scale. European instruments work very well for big utility scale projects, more than 500 megawatts, wind, solar farms, big interconnection. But you all told it before, 600 million Africans without electricity do not live inside 500 megawatts perimeters scopes. They live in villages, in secondary towns, in informal settlements, where the relevant project is 20 kilowatts, 200 kilowatts, maybe 1 megawatt maximum. And the paperwork sometimes costs more than the project itself. The second mismatch is time. Preparation cycles of 5, 6, 7 years. By the time a European program approves, for example, a mini-grid, the price of batteries has changed. Sometimes the developers have changed, and sometimes even the government has changed. And the third mismatch is power. Who decides, who owns, who benefits? Risk model, ESG checklist, timelines, everything is designed for Africa, not with Africa. So yes, capital costs matter, but the real mismatch is institutional. Second idea, how to fundamentally redesign European finance. The first shift, I think, is to move from scattered projects to true country platforms. So no more dozens of parallel programs, each with its own firm, audits, consultants. But yes, we need joint African-European platforms aligned with national electrification strategy, with pooling grants, concessional loans, guarantees, and private capital into one coherent pipeline. And this is where sovereignty begins. Not by rejecting foreign capital, but by controlling the rules of the games. The second shift is to de-risk at the early stage, not only construction. European investors love what we call ready-to-build projects. But Africa's real bottleneck is before construction. Land, permits, environmental studies, community dialogue, grid connection, feasibility. So if Europe wants to be effective, it should create early-stage windows with fast grants for African developers, local authorities, and utilities, not only for big international PPPs. This is small money, but with a massive impact. The third shift is to localize risk and reward. Very often, local banks remain spectators, local industry becomes a subcontractor, not a real partner. So Europe should expand local currency guarantees, use first loss instruments to crowd in African pension funds, for example, and should require local value creation, engineering, manufacturing, maintenance, and of course, training. Because there is no sovereignty without domestic value and no investor confidence without local ownership. So now let me very practical and speak about the last mile. For solar home systems and productive use kits, the need is simple, local currency working capital. So Europe could create a wholesale credit lines through African banks, protected by joint guarantees from European and African development banks. So no 3 years tenders, no 300-page forms, but just fast and scalable instruments. For mini-grids and microgrids, the solution is also very simple. Stop financing site by site, sites one by one. Instead, finance portfolios of 100, 200 projects using standardized contracts, results-based grants paid only when the connection is proven, and predictable regulation with fair tariffs. This is how we de-risk a small ticket like this, and how we attract serious operators. And at the end, for distribution networks, last mile access is not only about producing electricity, it is also about fixing the grid, reducing losses, strengthening feeders, digitalizing metering, and preparing for distributed resources. And here, of course, artificial intelligence can forecast demand, optimize maintenance, and manage variability. So as you can see, Africa can be a global leader, but only through value creation. The world cannot decarbonize without African minerals, cobalt, lithium, graphite, copper, but exporting raw materials does not create power. What creates power is processing, manufacturing, regional value chain, and skills. This is where European finance can be transformative if it supports local transformation instead of raw extraction. So sovereignty is not about saying no to foreign investors. Sovereignty is about saying yes under the right conditions, clear and stable rules, independent regulators, predictable tariffs, strong local industry, and the ability also to refuse projects that do not fit the national vision. So when these things are in place, investors come and stay. So let me conclude with one message. Africa needs, of course, capital from Europe or from other parts of the world that is faster in execution, humbler in design, simpler in procedures, and more local in value creation. So if Europe can make these shifts, European finance will not just fund Africa transition, it will partner in building the world's first large-scale energy model that is decentralized, resilient, digital, and low carbon. And that model, born in Africa, will matter far beyond Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I open the floor to other co-panelists to reflect on what others have been saying, I wanted to ask Mr. Jones, who is coming from the company Edison, the organization Edison in the US, if you could put this conversation into perspective with the overall theme of this conference, and if you could share your thoughts on what your co-panelist colleagues have shared today. We're curious to hear your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire, and good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be back at the MEDays, and again, thanks to Amadeus for inviting me. So I want to basically do a couple of things. Like the last speaker said, it's kind of hard to speak after everybody has said everything that you probably thought you were going to say. Just a little bit of background to understand where my remarks are coming from. So I was born in Liberia. My father used to run the utility in Liberia. And then after I left Liberia, I went to Europe. I lived in Sweden for 20 years. I now live in the US. The job I now have allows me to work with utilities all over the world, giving them advice, talking about their strategy, about the electrification. And we have about 70 companies, all from the large ones in Europe to the small ones in the Caribbean, providing electricity to about 3.5 billion people. And so as I listen to this conversation, I remind myself of a conversation I had with my father about 20 years ago, before he died. And the conversation was about why have we not electrified Africa? And what was interesting is, if you go back 20 years ago, and you sat on the panel, everything you just heard is what you would have heard back then. So for me, the theme of this conference is about reinventing the global equation. And So the equation to electrify Africa is not a difficult equation. We started hearing by the Honorable lady from the United Nations, who gave a very clear view of what the issue is. And then we heard from the gentleman from Ghana and from Angola. And so I liken this equation to going to see the doctor. And he gives you the pill to go home and take the medicine. But you don't take the medicine. But every time you go back to the doctor, he tells you the same thing. He gives you the same pill, but you don't take the pill. And I didn't believe I was going to say this, but I will say it. And since this has been recorded, if I get in trouble, I get in trouble. But I'm tired. I'm tired of being told what the medicine is, and no one is taking the medicine. We hear over and again governance, institutional reform, risk, public-private partnership, attracting investments. You hear this, there's probably 100 panels every year on electrifying Africa, and all of them say the same thing. And they've been saying the same thing for 20 years. When my father was at LEC, we said the same thing. So what is the problem? Because we know what the solution is. We have the medicine. So why are we not taking the medicine? And for me, I don't want to go to another conference and have to sit on another panel and be told the medicine, but we don't take it. This panel has done an excellent job in reminding us of the medicine. But if we don't take the medicine, we'll be right back in this room another year, and another year, and another year. And progress will be happening, but progress will be very, very small. So I think the equation that we're supposed to be looking at comes down, in my view, to three things. And the first thing has to do with people. It has to do with who will benefit from electrification. Yes, we have 600 million people, maybe more, maybe less, in Africa that lack electricity. But even if we were to build all the grids in Africa today, affordability becomes an issue. Jobs becomes an issue. No one is going to build a microgrid in a village if people in the village cannot pay. So somehow we're going at this from the wrong way, because we have not empowered the people to be able to even pay for electricity, and actually they will pay. The problem is, in many countries, electricity is used as a political tool. Whenever there's an election, electricity is promised to be free. And that's a problem. Because if it's a commodity, like every commodity, I know it's essential, but so is the cell phone. But no one says you should make the cell phone free. No one says you should make other commodities free. But somehow electricity is the one thing that, from a political standpoint, it's always said, we'll make it free. Well, if you make it free, how am I supposed to make money? So the first thing is we need to empower people by first telling them the truth. Maybe it's not going to be free. Because if you tell them it's free, how can you come back and tell them to pay for it? I'll give you an example. There was a story of someone in Ghana who was trying to build a microgrid, and this person was building it in the village, and people in the village could not pay. So he asked the question, what do I do? I said, do not give them electricity. He said, what should I sell? I said, what do they need? He said, ice. Okay, sell them ice. He said, how do I make my money? I said, bundle the price. Bundle the price, give them $5 for a block of ice, and give them several kilowatt hours for free. But he was making his money because they were buying ice, which they value. Because now they expect electricity to be free. If something is free, I won't pay for it. So they bundle it. But here's the problem. When that guy became profitable, the government in that village intervened and said, you're not supposed to be selling electricity. You're supposed to be selling ice, and why are you giving electricity for free? So you have the institutional intervention that stops this entrepreneur from being successful, because from the mindset of that city governor, electricity should be free. He wasn't thinking long term in terms of how was it being delivered. The last point I will make, so again, it comes back to the intervention that the gentleman from France talked about in terms of the institutional change. The other thing here I would say, we need as a continent to really take this regional integration seriously. Liberia is too small of a country. So is Sierra Leone. So is Guinea. So is Ivory Coast, to be honest, to build massive grids. The capital just isn't there. So how to forge regional collaboration, it's not something we have not discussed before in the context of Africa. The question is, how do we do it in a way that everyone benefits from it, and it's not trivial. My last point has to do with investor that Mr. Da Silva talked about. And I hear a lot about how much we need from Europe, how much Africa needs from other countries. The African diaspora sends over $100 billion back to Africa every year. If we need, someone said, Claire, yesterday, $85 billion. If the diaspora is sending $100 billion, why can't the diaspora help to electrify Africa? Today, if you talk to people in the diaspora and you bring up energy, they don't want to invest. Because why? They feel they're not going to recover their investment. Why? Because they feel if they invest in the infrastructure, power theft will be high, people will steal, and blah, 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 blah. So if this continent with 1.2 billion people and all the natural resources we have, I don't believe we should be asking for foreign investment is great, but what about the local investment? Because the problem is, unless Africans invest in Africa's electrification, we will not have any skin in the game. And we need to have a skin in the game. What Morocco is doing is very interesting. They are putting the skin in the game by making some investments here. But many other African countries, they are waiting for foreign investment. And I'm not saying foreign investment is not important, but if Africans could at least maybe put the first 20%, 30% down, it might help to lower the interest rate. It might help to attract more foreign investment, because you have to put a skin in the game. So coming back to my conversation with my father before he died, we need, as Africans and others who believe in the future of Africa, we need to put a skin in the game. So Claire, my question to you, since you're the moderator, and to this panel, how much is each of us on this panel willing to invest in Mr. Da Silva's company? If he came today and said, each of us, we talk a good game, electrify Africa. If he says, put $1,000 on the table. You like the question? Okay. If he says, put $1,000 on the table, how many of us want to do it? Many Liberians, since I'm from there, who live in America, they complain about electrifying Liberia. And so I say, okay, there's a fund. This fund needs to raise $100 million. Take some of your 401k and give $100 a month to help electrify Liberia. They won't do it. The same for Ghana, the same for Nigeria, many African countries. So if you don't invest in electrifying Africa, as Africans, I don't care how much foreign direct investment you get, the continent will never electrify.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. To answer your question, I would invest in Mr. Da Silva's investment company personally.
And there is no commission to me, by the way, just so you know.
Let's take this opportunity to open the floor to our colleagues to address what's been said. We only have a few minutes left, but please feel free to share your thoughts.
Yeah, they cut our time. Yes, they cut our time, but that's okay. Allow me just, I have a couple of, I will just provide two figures that I believe, so you understand the starting point of my narrative. If we exclude North of Africa and South Africa, if we exclude, so the 48 African countries remaining, they have more or less 1 billion people. If we decide to triple, multiply by 3, their electricity consumption overnight by using 100% of that new power as natural gas, you know how much Africa would contribute to CO2? Only 0.62%. Try to convince me that you're not putting me in a street jacket. Only 0.62%. Second figure, as we speak today, Africa's energy, electricity consumption, the whole continent, is equal to France and Germany. So this is, as an African, I have been in the policy-making field for 40 years. I will retire next year. These are my starting points. Second comment that I would like to make very quickly. Thank you for mentioning ecosystems. Critical. When I say put energy access as the driver, because when you are delivering your energy planning, you need to be very careful not to be driven by energy transition, but by energy access. If you are driven by energy access, industrial, consumption, you name it, I'm not saying that you need to crowd out renewable energy solutions. And I'm very comfortable because I was Minister of a Plan for 10 years, and I co-led the first wind power plant in Kingford. When we did it, a penetration rate of 25%. But how we got there? We did exactly what I said. We undertook energy planning in Kingford. When you were building our energy mix, wind power came very natural as one strong element, and then you went to PPPs. But when doing that, for us, it was clear that you need to build an ecosystem. If you don't build this is the reason, sorry, with all my due respect, that your pills are not landing. Because no ecosystem. You can go there, give pills, but if there is no ecosystem, they don't take it. To give a pill, you have a disease, you have a patient, you are a doctor, you are a patient. You go there, you land there, and you just give a pill. But you give a pill to a patient that has no ecosystems, has no institutions, has no country systems, has no human capital. That patient will not take the pill. Because to take the pill, you need to have an ecosystem. So, and I believe that the question of energy in Africa is a paradox. We have all energy sources, and you are a continent in the dark. It's a paradox. Starts before energy. Starts on the financing paradox that I just explained on my previous panel. Africa loses $500 billion, and Africa does not control the economic and financial flows. Africa enjoys a very high risk rating, country risk profile. Africa taps international capital markets in a very disadvantaged position. There is no way that Africa, with all these ingredients, can mobilize resources to tackle the energy paradox. It's impossible. So you need to invest in your country systems. And it took me 6 years, believe me, 6 years to build only the regulatory framework for the energy sector. And I had to go to Argentina, to cross the ocean. Why I went to Argentina? Because it was one of the best references in terms of regulatory frameworks for energy. And I will finish here. When I put in place a regulatory framework, I say, okay, Cristina Duarte now starts looking and chasing for indirect investment. And guess what happened? They knock on my door. They knock on my door, say, okay, we know that you did A. I was a little bit scared. I know that you did A, B, C, and D. You have put in place a strong regulatory framework. We are ready to jump. So do your homework, they come. But you need to build systems. You need to build a nation. Otherwise, you don't have FDI. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this very crucial remark on state building. Any other thoughts that you'd share?
Go ahead.
Please, Your Excellency.
Yeah, thank you very much. A colleague just mentioned regional cooperation. And that reminds me, I think that our African nations, in their effort to bridge the gap, the energy gap, they need to be very innovative. And one of the innovative approaches that my country, Ghana, has adopted was regional cooperation. We have the West African Power Pool, where excess energy from one of the countries is pooled together and supplied to other countries, and that has worked extremely well. And the other innovative approach was the concept of a power mix. We started very well with hydroelectricity, with the Akosombo Dam, providing initially in excess of the demand in the country, but with growth, things have changed. But our country, my country, has incorporated, other energy sources like thermal generation. We are thinking about even nuclear, power. So I believe that we need to look at all of these alternatives and see how we could harness those potentialities, in the effort to bridge the energy gap.
Thank you very much. Mr. Jones, you wanted to
Yeah,
share.
just a quick comment on the lady from the UN said. So think about this, right? In the US, for example, the investor-owned utilities invest every year about $100 billion in infrastructure. Those monies come from the private sector, from Wall Street and other places, not from the government. There's no backup behind them. And I always say, and coming back to the regulatory framework she mentioned, if you took the demand for energy today in Africa and you give it to a US utility that is on the stock market, their stock value will increase tremendously because the investors will see the consumers as a guarantee that this energy will be consumed. Let me just ask the question, I don't know the answer. How many African utilities can tell me the total value of all their assets today? So if I want to invest in an African utility, be it a microgrid or even a big one, and I want to put this company on the stock market, because this is the challenge, you can still put a government-owned entity on the stock market. You don't have to be owned by everybody else to be on the stock market. You can put a government-owned utility on the stock market and let us invest in it. But most African utilities cannot tell you what their total asset is. Which then speaks as an investor, I need to see what I'm investing in. And so today, I think one other opportunity for Africa as a continent is to realize that the demand is on this continent. The demand is here. What is missing is transparency for the investor, so I know, and also what's missing, coming back to the tablet we talk about the medicine, is the stability, so that even if after 5 years you change the government, because I'm investing in an asset that will be there for 25 years, the policy will not change. The problem for investors in many African countries is by the time there's a new government, they fire the CEO of the utility, they bring somebody else in, they change the whole staff. That doesn't give confidence. So we need to depoliticize electricity. That when you have a board, let the board be a board of industry experts, not just a board of government appointees. So that when you change the government, you don't touch the utility. You leave the utility until the tenure runs out. That is not what happens today, and I think that's a challenge in Africa today.
Thank you so much for this very insightful remark. Is there any other thought that want to be? Okay, please go ahead.
So maybe as closing remarks. So I believe that the Africa energy future will not be written spontaneously, or should not be written spontaneously. It will be shaped by choices that we can make together. So if we combine large-scale renewables, strong and digitalized grids, decentralized solution, and inclusive governance, with a clear planification, Africa can build a resilient energy ecosystem capable of driving the energy transition. So as Enel, we stand with this idea. We can accompany this journey. Thank you.
Yeah, just a first remark. It's not a question for Africa of a contribution to global emissions. It's not at all a question of global emissions. That's the old speeches. Africa is at the forefront of the climate crisis. You are the most impacted continent. So it's not energy transition, it's energy urgency. It's a radical shift. It's not a long-term energy transition with gas, natural gas as energy as a transition. No, there is a big urgency. And when I have African students in front of me, they are aware of this. And they are not discussing about gas, coal, and fossil and natural resources. So the real challenge is not, can Africa be a key player? The real challenge is, can Africa avoid once again being the place where the value leaves the continent? And to make Africa a global leader, three things are essential once again. First, local transformation through ecosystems, processing minerals at home, manufacturing components at home, capturing more value in Africa, not only exporting one to Asia or Europe. Second, regional integration via ecosystems. Once again, one country alone cannot build a continental energy strategy, but together, regions like North Africa, West Africa, the Horn of Africa can become that industrial blocks. So working together, stop faking it, only act and do it quickly. And third, massive investments in training and skills via, once again, ecosystems. So technology is important, but people are decisive. And Africa needs thousands of engineers, technicians, grid operators, project managers, and this is a real bottleneck today. So energy interconnections, common standards, shared data, of course, digital and artificial intelligence, common financing platforms. So there is where power is created. So yes, Africa can be a global player, but only if it chooses to become one through value creation, regional cooperation, and human capital.
Thank you. We're gonna be pushed out of the room soon, so I'm happy to give the floor one last time for last comments on the panel, and with our co-panelists from Morocco, that's perfect.
Yes, I think that we all have been said, but what I want to say is regarding the pills. I think that we all took the pills, but not the most adapted one. I think the pill needs to be stronger because I think that we're trying hard, each country by its own. Now what's interesting is to have the same strong pill together and have this integrated African ecosystem. And regarding the African integration, there is that huge project, the Morocco-Nigeria gas pipeline, which is, I think, could solve one of the issues that we're talking about and can be also a way to transport energy and molecules and electrons from country to a country. And I hope that next year in the same panel, we'll be here to talk about some action and not talking about how to accelerate the transition.
Thank you very much. We probably have to close. I really want to thank our distinguished panelists for this great conversation, very rich. And also thank the organizers, the Amadeus Institute, for the invitation and for organizing and all of the hard work. Thank you so much.